From getting completely demolished in her last couple of fights to lacking the skill to compete in the octagon anymore, here's why lousy Ronda Rousey should never return to MMA. The rowdy one got owned in her last fights. Even though she looked completely untouchable during her time at the top of the food chain, she was exposed when a real contender stepped up to fight her. Holly Holm was challenging Ronda for the crown back in 2015 at UFC 193, and many people believed that it would just be another typical first-round finish for Rousey, but that wasn't the case. The preacher's daughter was already a seasoned kickboxer before she made it to the UFC, and she showed Ronda what the next level in the sport looked like. Holly may have been a little intimidated by the rowdy one at first, but that was sorta expected given Ronda's massive presence inside and outside the cage. Holly survived the first round by demonstrating an amazing takedown defense and nullifying Rousey's judo, which made her the submission artist she was back then. Holly kept Ronda at a distance and kept tagging her with her significant height and reach advantage. Ronda, being who she is, kept rushing in to secure a first-round knockout, but only ended up gassing herself out. Ronda was already breathing hard, and Holly took complete advantage of this. She set up the perfect head kick that Ronda never even saw, and finished the lousy one off with punches. Rousey's reign at the top was over, and Holly became the new bantamweight queen. You know how champs usually bounce back after a tough loss? Well, that's exactly what Ronda didn't do. She was heartbroken by the loss, and even admitted that she was afraid of showing her face in public, cause Rousey was no one without the UFC belt. A bit of an identity crisis if you ask me, but she was never the same after that. And Ronda proved it herself when she agreed to fight Amanda Nunes for the title at UFC 207. She somehow gathered enough courage to step back inside the octagon in 2016, but her shortcomings had already been exposed by Holly. Fighters realized that Ronda only relied on her unrelenting aggression to win, lacking any proper technique to truly compete. What baffles me is how she was the betting favorite against the Lioness, but it took Amanda only 48 seconds to set the record straight, as she kept hitting Rousey right in the face over and over again, and she saw Ronda's wild swings coming from a mile away. The rowdy one had next to no defense, and didn't even put up much of a fight, so the ref had to step in to stop the fight almost immediately once Amanda smelled blood. Ronda herself realized that she had no place in the octagon anymore, and admitted as much during an appearance on The Ellen Show. She told the fans that she was never coming back to the UFC, just like she was never going to go back to the Olympics for judo. There were rumors even back in 2018 that Rousey might be coming back, especially after she started training with a new nutrition and strength coach. Ronda made it clear that wasn't going to happen, even revealing that she thought about taking her own life after her back-to-back losses. It was probably for the best that she made that decision, cause the octagon's no place for the faint-hearted. Champions are expected to make comebacks from tough losses, and it was clear that she wasn't cut out for that. Ronda may have gone on a 12-fight winning streak, but a single loss was enough for her to call it quits. Yeah, she came back to face Amanda, but you guys saw that Rousey wasn't into it at all. She made a lot of money during her time in the UFC and landed a lot of movie deals and stuff before finding a new home in WWE. The rumors of her return are just rumors right now, cause there's nothing official on it as yet, and the whole thing was started by John and Nick. The seasoned UFC caster believes that Rousey deserves to return to the octagon more than anyone else, because of what she did for women's MMA. Pair that with speculation around Ronda leaving WWE and her appearance in a DraftKings commercial for the UFC, you've got yourself an uncontrolled rumor that the lousy one's eyeing a return to the cage. It's true that it would be easier for her to return, because WWE and the UFC are both owned by the same parent company, but Anik himself said that Ronda should return only if she feels she can be competitive in the sport. John thinks the women's bantamweight division could use someone like Ronda, because after Nunes left, the division doesn't have many big names left. The stars have perfectly aligned for Ronda according to Anik, but he clarified that she should be thrown into a title fight directly. There are fighters who are simply more deserving of it, and it just wouldn't sit right with anyone in the MMA community. Ronda would also have to get over a lot of ring rust, and right now, Anik doesn't think that she can go toe-to-toe with the top fighters in the division. John may be advocating for the return of the lousy one, but a lot of pros think she should stay away from the octagon altogether. The woman who took away Ronda's crown believes that she doesn't have the passion she used to have, and that the fans should just let her do her thing. To Holly, it's clear that Rousey's enjoying her time wrestling and being a mom, and she doesn't have the same fire in her anymore, which is perfectly fine. Ronda's done well for herself over the years, and she can obviously do whatever the hell she wants to. But the preacher's daughter doubts that she'd be looking for a return to the octagon. It's not easy for older fighters to go through all the hard work in the training camps, let alone in the cage, so it's better for her if she stays away from the sport. This is something that even John McCarthy thinks, and he went as far as to say that he'd be surprised if Ronda decides to come back. She's built a whole new life for herself with her family, establishing her own brand and business, so there's no pressure on Ronda to do this for money either. It's true that Dana could offer her some serious cash if she agrees to return, but it wouldn't be a smart move for her. McCarthy thinks that the title should be completely out of the question for Ronda, because let's face it guys, she isn't John Jones or GSP, but she can fight a couple of her old rivals if she decides to return. The women's bantamweight division's in a slump right now. Anik was right about that, and Ronda can bring it back to the spotlight. The top contenders in the division might be too much for her to handle, so a rematch with Holly or a trilogy fight with Miesha Tate would be her best bet. Ronda suffered her first ever loss to the preacher's daughter all those years ago, and a potential fight with her has the makings of a great grudge match and spicy headlines. It obviously won't be for the strap, but the UFC can really sell this one to the fans, and they're sure to tune in even if it's to see Ronda getting manhandled once more. Then there's Cupcake, who has been Rousey's rival since the dawn of time. The two women have never liked each other and have been at each other's throats since they fought in Strikeforce together. Miesha was the first one to take Ronda past the first round, and even though she lost, she's always been a fan favorite herself. Apart from these two, the rowdy one simply doesn't stand a chance, because the competition's way ahead of her right now. Since Ronda left the UFC, the sport's evolved far too much, and this generation of female mixed martial artists is just too good. Rousey doesn't have a place among them, because they can either shut down her aggression or match it. She'd be completely out of place in the octagon today against younger fighters. And fans are also realizing that Ronda was never as good as they thought she was, because the level of talent's much better now than it was back in the day. Most fans are claiming that Rowdy would get steamrolled by most of the roster, and would only end up embarrassing herself. Some people may be excited for her return, cause she'll breathe new life in the division, but Ronda should stay away from the octagon for her own good. She's done well for herself in her career, and she doesn't need to botch it all up by coming back and getting knocked out in the opening minute. So there you have it, fight fans. From lacking the skill to compete in the octagon anymore, to getting completely demolished in her last couple of fights, that's why LOUSY Ronda Rousey should never return to MMA.